let them talk if they want to.
The building, or from the rooftop.
Sure.
Which is where they were playing. They were actually on the rooftop playing. And DA Charles Hines put a statement out saying that the officer received a 911 call, the stereo lighting was dimly lit, the officer wasn't able to see very well, and things happened in a split second. The officer responded, which means he shot after he heard a clicking sound, and he fired into the darkness. He hit my son in the abdomen. They took my son not to the nearest hospital, but to the hospital, and they took him out of Brooklyn and rushed him over to Manhattan or St. Vincent's Hospital, where he died.
Did you get justice on that?
Absolutely not. This happened, this is going to be 19 years come this September. It's going to be 19 years since this happened. And the reason, you know, I continue to fight for this justice for my son is because this officer in the deposition contradicted all of Charles Hines' findings and reasonings for not presenting the case to the grand jury and closing the case. The officer said that the stereo lighting was not dimly lit. He was able to see very well. Yeah. That he was not on a 911 call, that he was doing a regular routine patrol, and that the stereo lighting wasn't dimly lit and things didn't happen in a split second. He says that when he opened up the stereo door, that my son there was no one near. And then he says my son jumped down the steps and then jumped back up the steps and then jumped down the steps again. And then, and this is in a deposition, he's making these statements to my lawyer. He says that then my son turns and points the toy gun and starts clicking it. He said he heard 4 clicks and then he shot, then that's when he shot. And the kids, there were kids there now. Now this is the statements from the officer was, I think it was 3-4 months later. The kids made statements right then and said, Nicholas dropped the plastic toy gun and said, we're only playing. And the officer shot him anyway. This officer had a habit of patrolling the buildings with his gun drawn. And there were no complaints ever filed against him as far as in the department. But people were complaining about this officer. He had a name also they called him Robocop in the community.
Robocop.
Yeah.
And, you know, what's the, I mean, I am sure that if an officer was killed on duty in a housing project building in New York City, we would hear about it. I have never heard of such a thing happening in my lifetime. I mean, has it happened in 20 years or 30 years? I mean, why would he feel so endangered in a building when there is no history of this kind of thing happening?
Absolutely.
You never hear of it happening.
Right.
You would think, the way the media talks, that every project, every city, street in New York was a deadly war zone where every officer took their life in their hands every day patrolling with their gun out, and it's not really true, is it?
That's a complete understatement. That is completely not true. I lived in a housing complex all my life.
Yeah.
It is not anything close to what they're trying to portray it to be.
Right.
A dangerous area, you know, gangs running through the projects, terrorizing people and things of that nature. That does not go on in housing projects or housing developments. And the reason I want to jump off to the Kamali Gray.
Yeah, we're going to move on, because I want to get the background by talking to Nicholas about his case and, why he's involved and why he's following this issue of stolen lives.
Because I've been following police brutality cases for the last 19 years. I am a member of Parents Against Police Brutality, who are a group of parents who goes out and exposes the truth as to what happened to their children.
Right.
The Kamali Gray case, the 16-year-old from Flatbush who was just now shot. The reason why I am so afraid of this case is because it happened in Brooklyn. Charles Hines is the district attorney in Brooklyn. And Charles Hines has yet to prosecute a police officer. I mean, he's taken police officers to trial before, but as far as when they get to trial, they forget how to prosecute the case.
Right.
And that's Charles Hines for you, you know.
Yeah.
In my community, there's been 5 youths killed in the housing development where I'm from. And there hasn't been any justice in this case, only cover-ups. Starting with my son, who was killed in 1994, I am still fighting for justice for my son. This young man right here, what's his name? Andre Harris. Now, this is a case in itself. This was a complete cover-up. I mean, it's so sad how they cover these cases, but I must show the audience, being that I'm here right now. This was a case where Andre Harris was supposedly had been robbing a correction officer at his home. Andre Harris was supposed to be robbing a correction officer at his home. And it states that an off-duty city correction officer was killed by an intruder. Officer was killed one intruder and wounded another last night during a botched robbery in a Brooklyn apartment. Ed Soli, 35, a guard at Rikers Island, fired at least 7 shots at 2 men who tried to rob him and an unidentified female companion at 57 Monroe Street. Statement: They knocked at his door, said Sergeant James Foley, a police spokesman. Then he told them, "Give us all your stuff or we'll cap you." 57 Monroe Street. Andre Woody Harris is from, like I said, he's from the Gowanus community. I know him. And when I heard the story, I just couldn't believe it. So I went to 57 Monroe Street. When I went to 57 Monroe Street, 57 Monroe Street just so happens to be an abandoned building. An abandoned building is 57 Monroe Street. This is where the incident was, the robbery was supposed to have taken place. Inside the apartment, this is what the inside 57 Monroe Street looked like. This is the inside of 57 Monroe Street where this whole incident was supposed to have occurred. At the funeral services, which I attended for Woody Harris, there was a news reporter there, and I informed her on I went to the place where it happened. I told her that I would like for her to accompany me there because it is just ridiculous that the district attorney hasn't even acknowledged any of this. You know, this is
it doesn't look like somebody's apartment. That doesn't look like where somebody was living.
Exactly.
It looks like a place you would buy something you shouldn't be buying.
Right. Now I'm like, I mean, once the district attorney's investigators seen this, they should have immediately arrested that man. Because I mean, this is fabricated story. This is untrue, and that's why I'm afraid of the Kamali Gray case. I don't believe that young boy had any weapon at all that looked like a throwaway gun, which I've seen happen quite a few times, such as in the Monteque Smalls case. Monteque Smalls was also killed in the Gowanus houses where my son was killed at. The officers, after they shot Monteque Smalls, they searched the area. They must have searched that area for at least 2 hours looking for a weapon, looking for a gun. They didn't find any. I was told that a car pulled up and 2 officers got out. One was a female, one was a male. And they went over to where Monteque Smalls was laying at. And she reached her hand through the fence and pulled out a weapon and said, "Oh, we got a gun."
Oh, okay.
And I mean, it's just ridiculous.
They call that a drop gun, right?
Yes, it's just ridiculous the way that they continue to do these things. And I mean, we have people like Bloomberg and Kelly trying to say that these are the people who are out here serving and protecting the communities that we live in, when they are actually out there terrorizing people in the community. It's sad that this is continuously happening. This young girl here, Brianna.
All right, we had her father was on this show about a year or 2 ago, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Young Brianna, also from the Balm Hill community, 11 years old, denied assistance from one of the police. She was having an asthma attack.
Yeah.
And her mother was rushing her to the hospital when she encountered an officer. So she asked the officer to help her. Can you please help me? My daughter is dying.
Right.
This guy refuses to administrate any CPR. He says he didn't know. He tells her, "I don't know CPR." She gets in some guy tells her, "Yo, forget him. Get in your car and take her to the hospital." The hospital is nothing but a block away. She gets in the car, back in her car. She rushing her daughter to the hospital. She says that this guy gets in the police car, instead of him getting in the front, putting on his lights and speeding her, tell her, follow me. He gets behind her, and as she's trying to get through the street, he's banging the back of her car. Now, what kind of sense does that make? I mean, it's sad that, you know, we have to continuously live under these sort of circumstances involving police officers on a regular, everyday basis. Right. As far as, you know, them constantly putting out to the media that they are out there serving and protecting us, that is just it's just not true. Okay. They are not out there to serve and protect. In fact, it's been proven now, it's coming out that that's not even part of their job to protect the citizens. No. Finally, it's coming out. Oh, it's not even part of their job to protect the citizens.
The city fought a lawsuit where they claimed, where they were being sued by somebody who said the officer ignored me, and in fact, the city was arguing that the officer had the right to, that was not his main, he could walk away. Right. Without liability to the city. They try. I don't know how that lawsuit turned out, but I remember that was a lawsuit. It was in the papers. Right.
Well, let me just finish this last young man right here. He was killed in the Wyckoff houses, downtown Brooklyn. Jonathan Smith. Now, Jonathan Smith had just got home from work. Was going into the building where he lived. His mother lives at, and the police grabs him, searches him. They're trying to say he had drugs on him. They searched him. They didn't find any drugs. Right. They still handcuffed him. Right. Handcuffs behind his back. Handcuffs him behind the back, and they shankled his feet. The people who were there said that when he came out, he was shankled. His hands was behind his back, and they were walking him to the patrol car. Right. And then a van full of police, a police van pulls up. They all jump out of the car, out of the van, and start beating the crap out of this guy. They beated him to death. Right there on the spot, in front of this building, in front of his mother, in front of a tenant association president, and a whole crowd of people from the project he lived in. Right.
I'm not surprised.
Now I'm like, wow. I mean, it just don't make no sense for them to continuously murder innocent human beings. Right. How do police? I mean, I myself, I am very, very troubled behind, you know, the process that the city allows these police to get away with murdering innocent people. It's a sad, sad process that they just allow to happen, continue to happen. Since Amadou Diallo has been murdered, there's been over 228 murders in New York City alone.
Right. And that was the 49 shots?
Yes.
They shot him for, and what did he have, a wallet?
Right.
He was standing on his stoop of his own building, and the thing that he had was a wallet.
Exactly.
Which he was probably trying to take out his ID when he saw these officers coming up.
Right.
And so, stolen lives is, let's go to the point of what do we do about this kind of situation? What does the community do? What does New York City do? We know that there was a lot of protests out in Brooklyn after Kamani, and a lot of people, I think people were taken aback by how large the protests were. They were larger than in the past, and they seemed to tap a real frustration in the community.
The people in Brooklyn and down in East Flatbush are very, very, very upset. It's not like they don't know before this kid was killed that this stuff was going on. But when they killed Gray, they was completely tired of it. They had just killed Chantel Davis over there. Okay. So you know, and they was just fed up. I mean, they were actually ready, you know, to rally. Not rally, but you know, to fight. I mean, they're tired of this. Like I said, there's been over 228 cases. What do they want us to do? They want us to just constantly bury our children. The police go home. Nothing happens to them. No prosecutions. No nothing. Nothing happens to them. While they say they're investigating when they're only covering. That's another thing. People need to understand that the police department and the district attorneys do not investigate police murders. They look for ways to cover it up. That's why they have the 48-hour rule where they don't allow the officer to say anything. They just have the, he speaks to his attorney and the district attorney, and they find ways to cover the case to get the officer off. And it's been happening all the time. If that's not what's happening here, then we got some very, very illiterate district attorneys who don't know how to prosecute, because you're trying to tell me out of all of these cases, y'all cannot get no convictions, not one conviction off of these police officers?
Never. I never heard of it happening.
It's ridiculous. You can't. How are you going to justify so many cases over and over and over again?
Bill Kunstler once told me, this is a number of years ago, that the famous attorney Bill Kunstler, that it's very difficult to get juries to convict officers, much less prosecutors to prosecute them, because they're instilled a fear of crime, that somehow the police will boycott them or not protect them if they actually were to convict an officer, even of something they did. And it's a terrible state of affairs. The fear is created and then manipulated to be used to protect those who are supposed to be protecting us.
That's the whole thing. These police are supposed to be taken up, but they got so many people to cover and lie for them.
Yeah.
People like this guy right here, Pat Lynch. This guy is head of PBA.
Right.
He goes out and he don't care how the incident happened.
Right.
He's going to cover for the cops. This guy right here, Palladino, or however you pronounce Michael's
Palladino.
name. This guy right here is another one. He don't care what the situation is. For instance, the Sean Bell case, he justified that shots. I mean, how many shots Sean Bell got?
Similar 50, you know.
About 50 shots.
Right.
That's ridiculous. I mean, come on. He still justifies those cases.
That's what people said would happen when they went to 9mm. When the officers had the 38s and then they went to the 9mm, people said the reason why they took so long in New York to approve the 9mm is because they knew there would be like it would be like a war zone.
Right, exactly. But you know,
and
that's
I work over by 34th Street by the 5th Avenue by two times in the last year. It's a wild shootout instigated by the police has wounded civilians who were standing there on the street.
Right.
Yeah, and people might remember, but in front of the Empire State Building, where hundreds and hundreds of tourists are waiting online from all over the world, so it's a great message to all the people coming to America over the world. And somebody was walking down the street and they had killed somebody, you know, in a personal dispute, and they were storming by, and next thing you know, the police open up with a hail of bullets in front, and
everybody.
A dozen people were injured.
Wow.
Like people who were from all over the world. Like, you know, it's a very international crowd there going up to the Empire State Building.
Wow.
I mean, I shouldn't be laughing, but it's so absurd as to be ridiculous that you would open fire in that circumstance. You know, I'm not going to protect police of past eras, but I read a story about 2 officers before they had backup, before they had machine guns, before they had SWAT teams up in the Bronx, and some crazy nut was shooting at people from a rooftop at the street. One officer went like this and got the guy's attention. The other one snuck around, went up without any backup, and tackled the guy and took him down alive. All right? I'm not saying, I'm not going to want to apologize for cops of the past, you know, but I'm going to say that's a different approach. To doing your job, right? When there is a dangerous situation. I would like to have a police officer come and tell us why we can't have times like when the policeman, you know, and I'm saying I don't want to defend them in every situation that happened in history because it was probably just as bad, but the fact that I can point to incidences before SWAT teams, right, when it wasn't a paramilitary response. And now we have this paramilitary response.
When we go out, we're not defending someone who was armed in the police shot. We're talking innocent lives that are being stolen for no reason at all.
And what I'm comparing is that in situations where there really is a guy, they didn't have to kill him.
Right, exactly.
And they didn't need even backup.
Right.
Because we're old pros. They knew how to handle it. Where is that skill gone, or we just don't care anymore, or is there some new agenda at work?
Right.
And I just want to leave that question up in the air because I want to know more about the book. What is the book Stolen Lives about, and the induction ceremony that's going to happen? Nicholas Hayward, who's joined us graciously here on Let Them Talk, and he's going to tell us about what's coming up, what's next, what are people doing about this?
This book here has been out since the 90s. This documents over 2,000, excuse me. This documents over 2,000 cases of innocent people who were gunned down by law enforcement around the world.
Yeah.
This is nationwide. You know, the police are gunning down innocent people all over the place. And we have an induction ceremony which we do every year. It's called the Stolen Lives Induction Ceremony, which is coming up May 18th. And it's going to be at Riverside, the historic Riverside Church. That's where Martin Luther King gave that Vietnam speech over
Fidel
there.
Castro. So many famous people have spoken there.
Yeah, yeah.
We have to thank John D. Rockefeller for building it for us.
Yeah, right. But the ceremony is free. It's open to the public. It's like I said, it's at the historic Riverside Church. It's going to be 1:30 p.m. The address is 490 Riverside Drive. That's at 122nd Street, 121st Street, excuse me, in Manhattan. We are also looking for some of the recent victims who were recently gunned down by NYPD. If you are listening or watching this show, we are looking for innocent victims to induct into this book. If you know any of them, you can contact us at october22nd.org.
Is that the full word October or OCT, October 22nd?
Yes.
So it's october22.org.
Exactly.
October22.org.
Right. We are looking, you know, we also would like to meet the parents so that we can give them as much support as we possibly can, but also we would like to induct them into the Stolen Lives and the Stolen Lives Project.
And this book is has 2,000 cases documented.
Right.
And I'll just go through here quickly to show you that these are just cases as of 1999, and you're yes, right. We have a call. All right, go ahead. We only have a few minutes, so go right ahead. Who's on the phone?
Hi, it's Vanessa Chan calling in.
Hi, Vanessa. How are you?
Hello,
welcome.
Vanessa.
Hey, Paul. Hey, Nicholas. How you guys doing?
All right, and Vanessa, of course, has been on the show before, and she has a special case she wants to tell us about. Go right ahead.
Special case. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, the Kenny Lazo case. Yes. Yeah, we are having a vigil, Long Island vigil. Actually, it's a march against police brutality in Suffolk County. This was to highlight the murder of Kenny Lazo, who was beaten to death by 5 Suffolk County police officers back in April of 2008. So it was 5 years ago. And yeah, we've been working on building a movement in Long Island by connecting other families together and reaching out to community members. And yeah, so the march is going to be on Saturday at 1 o'clock. We meet outside the third precinct, which is on 1650 Fifth Avenue in Bayshore, New York. And we'll be meeting at 1 o'clock.
All right. And what is the story? What happened with Kenny Lazo? Just briefly, in 1 minute, what was the situation there?
Well, all we know is that he was pulled over for going 63 in a 55-mile-per-hour lane. The next thing we know is from the autopsy is that he was arrested. The family does not know why he was arrested. They were never given a reason as to why they arrested Kenny. But we do know from the autopsy that he was beaten to death with flashlights while he was handcuffed. So that's all we know.
Is there any sort of legal action, lawsuits, or any investigation or anything of this?
The family was able to pay for an independent autopsy, which is how I gave you that information. But the criminal case was, you know, the DA did not find reason to indict the officers, so they're still working. and there is a civil lawsuit that's ongoing right now.
Okay, great. And is there a website or a way people can find out more?
Yes, the website is justiceforkenny.wordpress.com.
Okay, justiceforkenny.wordpress.com.
Correct, yes.
A popular blog site. All right, great. Thank you very much, Vanessa.
Thank you for calling.
Okay, great. Have a great show. Thank you so much for having me on.
Great,
We were going to talk about some of the upcoming events, but you beat us to that one. But that's
That's great. Well, what else is coming up?
Well,
we have 2 more minutes. 1 more minute.
Yes, we will. All right, the Kenny Lazio. That's like she said, April 12th, in Suffolk County. We also have Kenneth Chamberlain. Kenneth Chamberlain, I forgot how old he was, but he was a senior who was killed in up in White Plains, and he had a heart. He had a
Heart condition, right?
yes, he had a heart condition, and he wore a safety device where it went off accidentally to call for help. So it went off accidentally, and the police arrived, and he didn't need no help because it went off accidentally.
Yes.
So the police was banging on the door. He said, "I don't need no help. I'm all right." He was telling them that he's all right. You know, they came to knock the door down.
Oh.
Once they got inside, he's standing there. He said, "Well, he's all right." And they was trying to give him some type of orders or whatever, and this and that. But he didn't pay him no attention, and they stunned him to death.
They stunned him, and so he was, and that affected his heart condition.
Right, he had a heart condition.
Thank you, Nicholas Hayward. So sorry to hear that story, but thank you for joining us.